I used to be a Weird Warriors kid. Now I'm a Weird Warriors adult. Each week I'm discussing a chapter of the iconic books by Aaron Hunter. My name is Charlie, and in today's episode, I will be talking about Prophecies Begin, Book 2, Fire and Ice, Chapter 5. Join me on this adventure into the world of warrior cats. Before I dive into this episode, a quick reminder that if you would like to access the comment section, extended spoiler versions of each episode, and bonus content, then you can subscribe for just $5 a month on Substack. Now on with the episode. A question that was lingering in my mind from last episode, I wonder what created Wind Clan Camp, because it's an odd pit in the middle of an otherwise flat territory. So I'm like, could it have been caused by a meteorite? I don't know if that ever gets explained, but that's just something I was wondering from last episode. So chapter 5 begins with Fireheart running across the Thunder Path. Graystripe follows soon after, and they continue to follow Wind Clan's scent. Graystripe says, "I shouldn't think any clan cat has ever been this far before." And Fireheart says, "Except Wind Clan." And they follow the trail across a field of long grass, and then they notice a thunder path arching high into the air on massive stone legs. Another thunder path ran below, so it seems like they're right by a highway overpass. And they can smell a fresh Wind Clan marker, and they move closer to those thunder paths. But then Fireheart pauses and says, "If Wind Clan is hiding so near the thunder paths, they must be fairly desperate not to be found. They're more likely to trust us if we arrive in daylight than if we creep up on them in darkness." And I think that's a really good instinct from Fireheart. We keep getting moments like this where he's having good instincts, and I could see a world where they would just want to immediately keep following the trail, like this is their mission, complete their quest, but no, they're taking a moment to pause and think strategically, which I think is very mature of them. So then they look for somewhere to get some sleep until it starts to get light outside, and they find a tunnel. And the way it's described as smooth and lined with stone and going under the thunder paths, I feel like it is like a sewer. So they go in there and they can feel a draft from the cars passing overhead and the wind, I guess, and then they go to sleep. And then it cuts to them waking up with the gray light of the nearing dawn visible at the end of the tunnel, and they start going through the tunnel deeper into it because they think it could lead them under the thunder paths and perhaps closer to where Wind Clan is. I feel like that's a convenient assumption that they make. I don't know why they would assume that would be the right way to go, because they had smelled the Wind Clan marker outside of that tunnel. So you'd think they'd go back out to try and follow it. But I guess Fireheart, he says, "I think this tunnel leads right under a thunder path. It might take us nearer to the ... And his voice trailed off. He had no words to describe the tangle of thunder paths they had seen last night. So I guess maybe he thinks it'll lead them closer to all the highways crisscrossing, which I guess is where they think Wind Clan went to get to safety from Broken Star. But anyway, as they were going deeper into the tunnel, I was getting worried that maybe this was the same tunnel that Wind Clan was sheltering in. But eventually they get to the end of the tunnel on the other side, and they go back outside, And it says they had come up near the edge of a patch of barren, dirty grass. Thunderpaths enclosed it on 2 sides, and another arched overhead. A fire burned in the middle of the grass. A few 2-legs lay around it. So there's some humans having a campfire in the middle of a dirty field under a highway overpass and with another road on either side of them. This is such a weird place for people to decide to have a campfire, and it seems unsafe and perhaps even illegal. And then it says one of them stretched and rolled over, and another grunted angrily in its sleep. But the noise and stench from the thunderpaths didn't seem to wake them. So not only are they having a fire there, they're sleeping next to highways and under highways with a campfire burning still. Aren't you supposed to put out fires when you're camping before you go to sleep so you know it doesn't cause a bigger fire? This seems like a very irresponsible group of humans here. And then they can see the outlines of cats flitting back and forth in front of the flames. And finally, Fireheart is reminded by this of his dream of cats by a fire. And he remembers Spotted Leaf's voice murmuring, "Fire will save the clan." And Fireheart wonders if this means ThunderClan's fate was bound with the fate of WindClan. And Graystripe says we need to find Tallstar. And Fireheart, again, is like, wait, let's think about this. We don't want to startle them. But then one of the 2-legs spots one of the WindClan cats and starts shouting at them. And that wakes up the other 2-legs. And they all start yelling at the cats. And the WindClan cats scatter. And Fireheart and Graystripe forget about their plan to hold back. And they sprint towards the chaos. It says every instinct told him to keep away, but he dared not lose sight of the fleeing WindClan cats. So I'd argue not every instinct is telling him to leave, because his instinct to keep sight of WindClan is still intact. But that could lead to a whole discussion of overanalyzing what is considered instincts or not. But anyway, one 2-leg looms over Fireheart, and something explodes beside him, pelting him with hard-edged splinters, but nothing pierced his thick coat. So, sounds like another beer bottle being thrown, like what happened in the prologue. So, not only are these humans having a campfire near highways, not only are they sleeping near the highways, not only are they not putting out the fire before going to sleep, but they're also drunk and throwing glass at cats. I feel like these humans in particular seem very awful. If they had more common sense, first of all, they wouldn't be in this situation at all. But second, if I woke up and a bunch of cats were around me, even if they were wild cats, and maybe, I'm assuming the reason they were so near the 2-legs was because they were trying to find food because they're starving. Even if these cats were trying to take food from the campsite, sure, I would be shocked, but the last thing I would do is throw glass at them. I mean, I've had a similar situation when I was a kid at summer camp, and we were on a campsite and we woke up to a bunch of raccoons, and people were chasing the raccoons and throwing stuff at them to try and scare them away. So I guess it is what would happen. But I feel like if this happened with cats, I don't know. I feel like I'd be taking pictures of them or trying to pet them, you know? And if it was that many, I feel like someone would bring up the idea of maybe we should call animal rescue. Where are all these cats coming from? This is very weird. So, I don't know. But the point is, they're in danger for the story's sake. So they run away from the 2-legs and follow WindClan into the shadows under the overpass and into their tunnel that they've been sheltering in. And it smells a lot more dirty and wet than the first tunnel they were in. And Fireheart and Graystripe see that the tunnel is lit by a narrow hole in the ceiling, and WindClan is huddled together, and they're all very thin, and there's a cold breeze going through, and a monster or a car roars overhead, and Graystripe and Fireheart flinch at the sound, but WindClan isn't fazed at all. They've clearly been going through it and have probably become used to the sounds at this point. A gray WindClan Tom yowls in alarm, warning the clan about Fireheart and Graystripe, and a line of warriors stand to defend the queens and elders. And Fireheart feels dread as he sees their claws and fangs, worrying that they're about to attack. And that's the end of chapter 5. It feels like a transitional chapter, although it is important because that's the chapter where they find WindClan. But I'm very curious for the next chapter to hear how this confrontation goes and how they go about trying to convince WindClan to return. So that pretty much wraps it up for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you'll come back next week for chapter 6. This has been Into the World of Warrior Cats.